Hi, how you doing? Greg Nichols here, eXp Realty. I want to talk to you a little bit today about Sacramento. It's a city that I have lived in most of my life, and so uh, I'm fond of it. I'm comfortable here, and I enjoy it, and I think you would too if you moved here. So if you want to learn more about Sacramento, this is a good place to do it, this channel. So subscribe to our channel there so you can get more videos like this. Now we're going to talk about historical Sacramento. In fact, as you see over my left, over that shoulder there is downtown Old Sac. And that's a street scene probably 20 years ago by the looks of the cars. But anyway, let's talk about this a little bit. Well, first of all, let me tell you what I did, how I got in real estate. It was kind of historical too. I went to work for a company called Kiernan Realtors. That was in the late 70s. And Kiernan Realtors had 8 or 9 branches around Sacramento. And their headquarters was on P Street. And it was at 3001 P Street. And that was right at 30th and P, right there at the 99 freeway. And anyway, that was an interesting company. It was founded by a guy named Tom Kiernan, and he founded it in the 40s, probably mid 40s, and he ran that company until he sold it off to a couple men, and then I went to work for those men, and that was in the 70s. So that was a company that had been around a long time, and it later turned into some other companies, and I think they got absorbed, and that company now is inside of Coldwell Banker, I believe. That's who the company is now, except they were national. So anyway, that's a history of that, how I got in real estate. And then I went into my own firm, was a broker of my own firm for about 30 some years. And then I recently went to eXp because I liked what I saw, and they've got a lot of good technology, a lot of good programs that are good for the clients and the agents. So anyway, let's talk about Sacramento now. And you know, the first city of Sacramento was built 1 story lower than the city that you see now, downtown, next to the river, and probably down J Street and I Street, and those streets that then go towards the east. Now, what happened is that there was such severe flooding of that old Sacramento in the 1800s that they had such severe floods that hundreds and hundreds of people would die in these floods. And then they'd have to dry the land out, and in the ensuing filth of a drying out flood, there would be diseases, and then just as many people would die of disease too. So one thing they wised up about to preserve the city is they built it up a 1 story higher, and now the city that you see now in downtown Sacramento is 1 level higher. The street level is 1 level higher than it was in the 1800s. Interestingly, there are still caves and passageways down there, and there's actually a guided tour. You can get in a guided tour and go look under the current city. I knew about it because before I got in real estate, I was in law school, and I was driving a 7-Up truck. Law school by night, 7-Up truck by day. And what I did was I was delivering products downtown there, 7-Up products, and we'd have a hand cart, and you'd get everything on the sidewalk there. Like there was a restaurant down there called Machiavelli's on J Street, very popular place. And I would deliver, a big stack of products, set it right there on the sidewalk. And the guy would come out, and he'd open these doors. He'd put out some cones, and he'd open these doors on the street, and there's an elevator. And we'd put my stuff on the elevator, and we'd lower it into that lower level where they did their storage and things. But that was the original correct level long before. So now that was just a little bit I threw in because I've seen the history of this city develop. Now, Sacramento started bulging in size way back, and this is now in the 1900s that they decided to build out and make some suburbs, and they built east there, which is where you get the fabulous 40 homes. And then they also built an interesting one on Highway 160 just north by Royal Oaks Drive. They built a subdivision called Woodlake, and they were pretty classy homes, and they're still there, and they're old and they're beautiful. And I actually sold one in the 70s for my ex-wife's grandfather, and I think he probably bought it when it was built around the 1920s, and then I got to sell it for him, and that was in the Woodlake subdivision. And now what's there is that's Royal Oaks Drive, that's on the edge of between the Highway 160 and Arden Way, and then you have the big post office, the headquarter post office there on Royal Oaks. So then there were old arteries, I call them, but those are highways that would travel between cities. For example, you have Roseville Road that would take you from near downtown, and it would take you to Roseville. I was going to make you guess that one, but see, Roseville, and you see that runs along the tracks over there by where the Roseville Road is, and then it just seems to keep going all the way out, and it seems to run into I think it dead ends at Fittyman now in Roseville. And so that's Roseville Road's one of them. Another one was Folsom Boulevard. Folsom Boulevard ran from the south on the side of the city all the way to, guess it? Yep, town of Folsom. Now, so anyway, Folsom Boulevard. We've been on all these streets, but we don't always see the history that they have. But that's how they got their name. Now, there's another one, Auburn Boulevard. In fact, Auburn Boulevard was the old US 40. So it was Highway 40. Now, if you're going down Auburn Boulevard nowadays, you can see old signs once in a while that say US 40, because they still call it that, but no one refers to it that way anymore. So Auburn Boulevard. Now, where was that going to go from downtown? That was going to go to Auburn, and I'm not sure it ever got there, but it got to the connectors of Auburn, which would be Roseville and Loomis and Rockland. All these are old cities, but Sacramento was here first. Sutter's Fort, and then they built the city on the river. So anyway, more info. The flooding system is, people will find interesting. Sacramento is surrounded by rivers, and you got the America and you got the Sacramento, which kind of merge, and then you've got the Cosumnes, and you've got the Feather River, and so lots of rivers around. And I told you it flooded earlier. I told you it flooded seriously in the past, and in the 1800s, and a lot of people died. Well, then what happened was the Army Corps of Engineers in 1946, they built the Folsom Dam. They also built all of the levees that are on all the rivers. That was the Army Corps of Engineers that did that. And what they did is they stopped the massive flooding. And by the way, there's still a museum under the Folsom Dam. It's closed to the public. You'll never probably get in there again. But we used to go and look at it all the time, and they had a big map on the wall, and they would show the damage of the flooding on a big wall. I saw an aerial view of how much of Sacramento was underwater. Much of it. So you ought to appreciate those levees. You ought to appreciate the Folsom Dam, and you ought to appreciate the Army Corps of Engineers, because that's why you don't stand up to 3 or 4 feet of water in your front yard in the town of Sacramento and outlying suburbs in the winter, is because I know we see flooding here, but it's nothing like it was 100, 150 years ago. So anyway, that's more interesting. And then, by the way, they have valves, and when those rivers get too swollen, they dump the water out to the rice lands, which all of you seen those big lakes when you're driving on Highway 80 towards San Francisco, and you get on that causeway and you look to each side and you see those great big lakes, which are rice fields. There's another one when you're heading past the airport towards Woodland on Highway 5, and you get over that overpass and you look around, and all of a sudden you're on that causeway and you see another big lake in both directions. And that's water that is channeled out of the rivers so they don't breach the levees. And it happens just about every year here. And then what they do is those farmers that grow rice paddies, rice there, they pay them because that ruins their crops for the year. So they pay them a check as if they grew their rice, because we use those rice lands to channel excess water. And so anyway, then where those streets were, Folsom Boulevard, Highway 50 went there, Auburn Boulevard, Roseville Road, Highway 80 went there. And so now we take for granted Highway 80 and 50, which didn't used to be there. Now, as those freeways were going in, then the development just exploded out in the suburbs. Roseville, Orangevale, Fair Oaks, Antelope. In fact, Antelope isn't where it used to be. Antelope used to be closer to Roseville, over there along Roseville Road, and the whole historic Antelope was demolished in one day, and nobody died. But that was the Roseville train incident of 1972, where my best friend and I sat on the Wallerga overpass, almost just observing explosions and propane cars going up, mushroom, orange, and black clouds. Anyway, that was an interesting day, 1972. Bombs from Vietnam were in rail cars, and they went off and started exploding right and left. Anyway, that was all contained and taken care of. But that was an interesting one. So the original town of Antelope kind of got pushed because the old one, the old post office and everything that they had was all leveled on that day. Anyway, then you had development coming out on the two major highways in the form of suburbs so that people could get downtown quick. And that's kind of a joke now, right? Because of traffic, because now we're highly populated. We're very populated. But we have those two freeways, and you now have beautiful neighborhoods out there down 80, out there down 50. Then I have to mention the military bases, McClellan Air Force Base, which was North Highlands, and Mather Air Force Base, which Rancho Cordova built around, and so did Rosemont. And so I grew up in North Highlands as a kid. And the original neighborhood of North Highlands was called Plainhaven. And that's right there by Watt Avenue and Air Base Drive. Old section. Used to have a paper route there. But then North Highlands grew, and it grew north, and it got pretty large. And it serviced a lot of the servicemen and their families. And so that's how the military bases fit in. Those are both got closed. Those now both serve a lot of commercial, private purposes, as well as airports. And so those are interesting too. So real estate. Real estate is a interesting thing in this city of Sacramento because it's affordable. Now, people that live here don't think it's affordable, but people that come from higher ranges like Southern Cal and from the Bay Area, they think these are bargains over here, and they really are comparatively to those places. So our prices are stable right now. They're not dropping right now, and this is 2023. But the interest rates has put out a challenge of fast sales, but things are still selling. And so you have very affordable prices, and you have some very nice areas. Roseville is a very desirable area, but very expensive. And then just next to Roseville, you have Citrus Heights, which is more affordable, and it's very large. Interestingly, I was at a client's house once on Fairvale Way, and he had me selling his house, and he says, "Can I tell you why we're called Fairvale Way?" And I go, "Sure." He says, "Well, I'm right on this house and street is right on the dividing line of Fair Oaks and Orangevale." And so therefore, I think Fairvale runs into either Hazel or Sunrise. I forget now. But he says, therefore, they named my street on the dividing line Fairvale. Fair from Fair Oaks and Vale from Orangevale. So this street was a compromise in naming Fairvale. I know hundreds of little points of history like this. I'll have to do a few more videos like this and cover some other subjects about Sacramento, but I hope you enjoyed this. And now, if you're selling or buying a home, give me a call. We can talk about your needs. We are aggressive marketers, and I am very experienced, so I'd be happy to talk to you. Now, be sure to subscribe to this channel so you can get more videos just like this. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.